Thank you very much. Let me start by thanking CGS not only for inviting us and organizing this flagship event, but also for keeping the refugee crisis on the top of its agenda. Let me briefly, analyze how does a particular portion of the refugee crisis look in real life. Just a month ago, earlier in November, Pakistan announced that all Afghan refugees must leave Pakistan, otherwise they will be forcefully, deported. And the consequences of this event can be very severe. Afghanistan, which is already going through a severe crisis, where people, like out of 40 million people, 30 million people need urgent humanitarian assistance. On top of this, the government of Pakistan are asking the refugees to leave their country. First of all, there will be no places, at least safe place for Afghan refugees in Afghanistan to be fed or given shelter. And this is a huge challenge. And I must say that Islamabad accused Afghanistan for the security situation in Pakistan. But I think Pakistan does not realize that it is the militant in Pakistan who are inspired by the rise of Taliban. Whenever there is a security incident, a bomb blast, Pakistan, without investigating, accused that it is Afghan Taliban or Afghan refugees. And therefore, all Afghan must leave the country. I think this is not a solution for the security of Pakistan, because Pakistan cannot treat Afghanistan just like, let's say, a very far country, or European country, because these two countries have a very deep history and connection. Who live there are Pashtun mostly. They share one culture, one religion, one language. And when Afghan refugees migrated to Pakistan in early 1980s, they intermixed with those people. They got married into each other communities. So for example, today there will be almost in every Pashtun family, you will see people or their relatives living in Pakistan. And on the other hand, they will be having family members in Afghanistan. But because of these visa sanctions and border restrictions, if something happens, let's say a mother loses its daughter who is married in Pakistan, she is not able to get visa to go and see her body, and vice versa. So this has made the life of Afghan refugee very, very difficult. And unfortunately, in Afghanistan, we don't have good health facilities, not to speak of education. And when people who need critical care, they want to go for treatment to Pakistan, they cannot, simply because they cannot get visa. I must say that women and children are on the forefront in Afghanistan. As my colleague mentioned, women have been discriminated, unfortunately, and they are totally dependent on their men. And if their men are unemployed or God forbid died, they left with no support at all. I think there is volume of research, even policy-oriented research, how to solve this issue. But politics is a nasty game, sometimes very unpredictable. And implementation of those policies itself is a huge challenge. So it's not easy to, right away or overnight solve the issue. But definitely it can be improved, especially if there is international enhanced cooperation. If even a politician taken into more humane approach rather than just waging war for their own national interest. It may be a little bit too optimistic, but probably this is the only solution. Thank you.
I think many of the participants have raised a very interesting question here, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone.
But it's also a reality when Afghan refugees went to Pakistan at that time, thanks to the notorious dictator General Zia-ul-Haq, who wanted to be the leader of Islamic world, and he established a vast number of Islamic seminaries. And Afghan refugees who could not afford schools or food, they sent their children to those madrasas where they were given free literacy and food. And in those madrasas, they were radicalized so that they can be used again. And then, with the support of even Western world, they came into the front forth and also supported that strategy or project of Pakistan so that they can defeat Russians. But they were not realizing that, radicalizing people can come at one day to hunt your own people, and they are suffering the pain today. And UNHCR and the donors countries, they are doing their best to mitigate those, crises. But to prevent these crises from taking place in the first place should be long-term solution. How states can, let's say, not use or misuse refugees or any other strategies, for their proxy wars or their evil. We must, especially the international community and the great powers, focus on the root causes of refugee crisis and reduce the burden on the state that they are dealing with. But again, just finishing on the last sentence, be it Ukrainian refugees, Yemen, Syrian, Myanmaris, whoever they are, it's the people who are at the receiving end, and the politicians or those at higher level will hardly see any the real life consequences or impact. Thank you for listening.
Human rights and national. Thank you.
Just if I can quickly add one sentence, 30 seconds. I think Bangladesh should also learn from Pakistan in managing the Afghan refugees, because when Afghan refugees came to Pakistan, they were not at all registered, most of them. And Pakistan is now seeing the consequences. So what Bangladeshi policymakers should take in consideration to have them all registered, because in long term, it's going to be very difficult to manage them, be it from security perspective or immigration issue. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you so much. I think the last two questions were essentially about the situation in Myanmar relating to the ICC, but also the question about the difference with Libya. Now, it's a very long answer, so I'm happy to speak to you during the break. I will just briefly say, I think that the situation in Myanmar highlights the limitations of existing global governance and the multilateral system, in the sense that we've already,
In Germany. Sujin nicely pointed out, we are one of the biggest donors. Multilaterally, we're the second biggest donor in the world, but we are also one of the biggest receiving states of refugees worldwide, depending on which statistics you look at, somewhere between place 4 and 6 in the world. But that doesn't necessarily, of course, mean that we do everything right, as you just pointed